Should we?
Yeah, so
You don't want to restart the intro. You just want to keep going with the knowledge that some people didn't get to hear everything 100% perfectly.
well, the recording version, which is what actually goes up on the audio, that's going to be edited down properly, having the thing where we talk about the volume taken out, and the volume will be properly set for the period before then as well, because we're professional.
I actually do spend a lot of time setting the volume good, like mixing our volume, and then mixing it together afterwards. The only time I ever cut anything out, though, is if I'm editing something and I tried to cut you off at the very end and I wasn't successful.
Okay, then you cut me off in editing.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. But this is our first episode of 2 this week. We are going to be having another episode tomorrow night talking about Bad Batch episode 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So we did get a good amount of emails asking about Bad Batch topics. When we get to the emails at the end of the show tonight, we'll just be covering the stuff related to Crystal Star or other broader Legends or EU podcast stuff. Mm-hmm. And then any Bad Batch questions that we've been asked, that's going to be covered tomorrow. So we're not ignoring anyone.
Did we announce our next book yet? I can't remember.
We haven't announced our next book, and we'll want to talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Did we decide what our next book is even?
We didn't decide our next book, but if there's an episode tomorrow and then there's an episode next Thursday, that episode is going to be episode 66.
Right, so Revenge of the Sith novelization.
We're back on track if we want to do that. If we want to read another book.
Yeah,
are you up for that?
Yep,
okay,
I'm going to listen to the audiobook for that one, so no skin off my back.
Right.
All right, so let's just get into it, though. First of all, Corey, Crystal Star. Worst book in Star Wars history?
Hard disagree.
Okay.
It's not even the worst book we've spoken about, and there's a lot of bad books coming up, but I think this book has an undeserved reputation. I actually quite enjoyed reading this.
All right, so for me, it's like, is this book well written? No, not really.
Really? Okay. Okay. Go. Keep going.
Did I have more fun reading this book than Thrawn Greater Good? Yes. Is it a better book? No, probably not. Did I enjoy it more than Greater Good? Yeah, a lot more.
Okay, so we both kind of agree, but for very different reasons. Like, it's definitely got some of the weird 90s book vibes that a lot of the ones that we've been kind of lower on have had, where it's like, it's not quite as good as, or it's not the right mix of like Star Wars being Star Warsy and good writing that like X-Wing is, or the Thrawn trilogy in a lot of ways is. Mm-hmm. But like the weirdness in this book can be off-putting, but it's still fun. And I don't actually think it's written terribly. I think it's written very 90s-ly.
I mean, I think the one issue that people bring up rightly is characters, where the characters in this book are weird. That's what I meant with writing. Regarding the actual writing itself, it's fine. I don't mind the weirdness too much. Like, it is kind of weird that Waru is such a central part of the book, but like, you don't find out his motivations or anything, or you don't get much of him until
he wants to go home.
Yeah, but you don't find that out or really learn anything about him till the last, like 20 pages.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of happens. Like, it's not anyone working towards a thing. Mm-hmm. It's just stuff is kind of in its state, and then eventually there's like a switch gets flipped and whatever the problem is solved. Like, Leia and Releo are flying towards the planet, and then the kids just happen to be there. They don't have to really look for them. It's just like,
well, they pull themselves out of hyperspace, all done right? Like that.
Yeah, but yeah. They just pull in. It's like, oh, look, there's the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right on that. Let's talk a bit about the actual plot, though, because I'm sure a lot of people probably haven't read this one. But I mean, if you look at that cover, how could you not? First of all, Corey, do you want to give us the scientific explanation of what a crystal star is?
So a crystal star is a star that's made out of crystal because science fiction.
Isn't it? It's weird, though, because it's like, don't they say like quantum crystals or something, too?
Well, you just throw quantum on in front of whatever you want to sound cool, and that's what happens, right?
Yeah. So the whole kind of idea is Han...
Well, it's a pretty unique plot line for a Star Wars book that we should really give its due time, right? Like, I don't want to just jump into this. This is a book about, like, and I don't know how they came up with this idea, but it's a book about the Solo kids being kidnapped, and like, 10 out of 10. How'd they come up with that?
Yeah, and I love how Leia is surprised that the kids are kidnapped when like she's specifically at a planet that's known for kidnapping kids.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you gonna do? Stab me, man? Who's stabbed? Like,
what if? Just throwing this out there. What if she just didn't bring them to this one? Leave them with Winter like she does for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and the solo kids are, well, Jaina and Jason are 5, and Anakin is 3.5. So they're a lot
Are they
young.
even that old?
Yeah, I think so, because they say that they're 5 on one occasion.
They do have. Yeah, Anakin does say his age. Okay, because this is 12 years after the Battle of Yavin.
And so it's like
Anakin's born in like
a decade before the other books we're reading right now, Young Jedi Knights. About a decade, right?
Around that.
Yeah, maybe a little less. But yeah, the solo kids are kidnapped. As this is happening, Han and Luke are on basically a boys' trip to this station. How did you pronounce this? The station name.
Say.
In the audiobook, because I for this one I listened to the audiobook and I read the how did it spelled again? It's like they
Cresseih.
Yeah, they call it Kresha Station, and I don't know where the A comes from. But
you can
Kresha
having
Station.
the RS like that's not a weird pronunciation of that, I don't think.
I think like, or no, they say, how do I say it again? Kresha. Yeah, I think it's Kresha. But anyway, it's basically a space station. I think it's on like an asteroid though, right? I don't know if it's ever 100%
no,
clear.
it seems it's its own station that's orbiting the white dwarf that's also got it. Like it's a binary system between a white dwarf and a black hole, and the station is like a standalone station, I'm pretty sure. Because R2 like powers on the engines and makes it float off after them at the end.
Yeah, that's true. They talk about craters and stuff, and it's got like, it's kind of weird because it's got like an outside to it, and it's like kind of in a big bubble, a shield bubble. So like they go outside, and like it's got its own weather system and stuff. But yeah, so that's what they're doing. And then as that's happening, Leia is alongside Chewbacca is off on another planet where the kids end up being kidnapped. And then they are kidnapped by Heathrear and the Empire Reborn. Or is it the Reborn Empire?
Empire Reborn.
Empire Reborn. And,
Reborn Empire is different.
Yeah. And because so then we get like a lot of the book is kind of the kids, Jaina and Jason, in this kind of, they're basically identifying force sensitive kids and kind of training them, kind of selecting some of them to be fed to Waru. And kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, so Waru is on Kersha, on Kesha Station, and he wants to go home. So he needs to eat these force-sensitive kids to get more power to open a rift into other space where he's from, which is another little pocket dimension. So Heth has a deal with him that he's going to give him all this power, or give him all these kids, and then Waru can also put some of the power back into people. So Hethrear is hoping that by giving Waru a bunch of extra kids, he's going to be like, oh, Hethrear, you can have some more of this power, and then you're going to be super epic. And Hethrear wants to be super epic. So that's basically what he's going for there.
Yeah, I think my favorite quote in the book is, Waru, the time has come. You have Skywalker. Keep your promise to me, Waru. Make me omnipotent.
Make me impotent. Please do it.
Impotent, yeah. So, do you think, is Waru a bad guy then?
Yes, he murders kids.
But he's just trying to get home.
Yeah, there can be hitchhikers that murder a bunch of people on their way home, and they're just trying to get home. They're murdering people. So...
But like,
sorry.
So when he's healing people, is that just to keep his cover?
When he's healing people, that's partially to keep his cover, so he can just get the ones that he actually wants. And part of it is just that he doesn't need the energy right then, so he pumps some back in.
But I mean, that's
he's
kind
really
of like,
looking.
He doesn't have to heal people. He could probably.
He doesn't have to, but if he didn't heal people, then they'd stop coming to him.
Yeah.
He's waiting for the right little Anakin Solo to come along to just suck the Force out of.
Mm-hmm. My other question was, does he know at the end before Hethru tells him that Luke is powerful? Because he's like talking to Luke for a long time. Like Luke is bothering him, basically.
Yeah, I think he's just so annoyed by Luke, he's blinded to any of Luke's power.
Mm-hmm. He's like, fine, I'll heal you.
Yeah, Luke starts really simping for Waru as soon as he meets him. Because Luke has this thing that actually is kind of persistent throughout almost all of like the Bantam era, and then a bit in the Del Rey era in a kind of a different way, where his whole conception of what's good and evil is very heavily centered on the light and dark side of the Force, where he does kind of the same thing with the Yuzon Vong, where he's like, oh, if they're not dark side, are they really that bad? Or if they're not part of the Force, are they worth anything? Or if they're not part of the light side of the Force, are they worth anything? And he kind of does the same thing here, where it's like, oh, Waru's not using the dark side of the Force. He must be pretty epic.
Yeah, it's... So what's going on with Luke? Because Luke is really weird this whole book. Like Han is basically out drinking. He'll come home... Luke's just sitting in the darkness, and then Han comes in, and Luke just turns on his lightsaber. Like,
yeah, and in a moment of purest instinct, he turns on his lightsaber and is about to kill Han, but he's really heavily affected by Waru. Like when Leia and the kids get there, they're kind of affected the same way. So
Luke's
I don't think
got a little like psychosis going or something.
Yeah, like there's some sort of weird Force stuff happening around that.
It's kind of weird though too, because I expected the explanation, because I haven't read this book for years. I expected the explanation to be, because there's also the issue with everybody is kind of not able to use the Force very well, and I expected that to be because of Waru, but it ends up being because of the Crystal Star, which is like quantum fluctuation.
Yeah. It's the resonance of the crystal star interfering with their ability to use the Force.
It's like when that bridge fell down in like Washington or whatever because the wind like blew just the right way.
Yeah, that stopped people from using the Force then as well.
Yeah. Luke's like, turn off the microwave. I gotta levitate something.
But yeah, he's upset because he's trying to find Jedi. Then he thinks that Han might be cheating on his sister.
Yeah,
which like. I feel like that's a reasonable takeaway from what he saw happen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like if I went on a boys' weekend with my brother-in-law and
he encounters an ex,
him and his ex go like spend the entire night in his room. Then he walks out in the morning after he tells me, "Oh, I'll be right back." And yeah, I'm gonna be pissed too. Like I'm not. I feel like you're pretty naive if you're jumping to the conclusion of like, oh no, you just fell asleep. Like it's a reasonable takeaway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially where like Han spends a bunch of the book talking about how he loves flirting and stuff.
That was one of the weird things. That was one of the first things that I had noted as like weird character moments, because he talks about how him and Leia have this understanding of like, oh, there's nothing wrong with flirting. You can look, but don't touch. It's like Han is the most jealous person ever.
Yeah, anytime someone looks at Leia, he's like ready to leave her.
Yeah, like any book that even mentions a soldier, even if he doesn't interact with them, he's like mauling from several pages away.
To be fair though, she considered leaving him like for a soldier. So I think that's fair.
Should have done it. That's one of the weird things about reading like NJO and Young Jedi Knight stuff. Any scenes with like Tenel Ka's parents in them, it's like they clearly don't want anything to do with each other. Like Isolder's in love with Leia forever.
And Teneniel Joe is in love with Luke, right?
Yeah, it's not a healthy situation.
No, it's not good. I mean, they could get something real freaky going on.
Well, then they just resent Tenel Ka for getting with the son/nephew of the people they love.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that's kind of like some Twilight shit there, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not good.
No.
Not great.
No. All right, let me just pull my notes, because I had some really important notes here I want to read. Leia. Leia's so rude at the beginning of this book when the kids are kidnapped. Like, understandable, I guess. You did just have all three of your children kidnapped, but like, She like doesn't give
she's rude before the kids are taken.
Mm-hmm. She like doesn't give a shit about anybody. She doesn't give a shit about Chewbacca. She's like, I was like waiting because Chewbacca gets like grievously injured. I'm waiting for her to like give a shit, and she's like, Chewbacca can't die. And I'm like, there we go, because we need to know where the kids are. And I was like, there it is.
Yeah. It's like the kids get kidnapped so much, and she never really goes off like this on anyone else that's supposed to be watching them. Like, she talks about how great Winter is, but they get kidnapped like 3 times under Winter's care.
My first note was, how could this happen on a planet where children are routinely abducted?
The best place to kidnap.
Yeah. My third note was werewolf. You want to talk about that? He takes a big drink beforehand.
Well, I thought you'd be regaling us with the tales of the werewolves, but
why'd you think that?
Well, how could you not? We're going from Twilights to werewolves, so I thought you'd build up a connection there. But these are the kids of the Manticodrians.
Yeah.
Who are they're these giant cats.
Werewolves. They're cats, are they?
That's what it sounded like.
I just kind of imagine them giant dogs, but yeah.
It sounded more like they're wolves-ish, but they kind of seem more feline. I was kind of picturing Nexus the entire time.
Okay, fair enough.
That might be why I'm saying cats, but yeah, apparently the Manticodrians give birth to these giant wolves, and then those wolves make a chrysalis around themselves, and they turn into the Manticodrians as adults.
Yeah, which have like 4 arms, don't they? Because there's one part early on, which because I remembered that part, and there's one part early on where like one of the adults is like explaining everything she's doing to the wolf, and I was like, oh, that wouldn't make any sense if you're reading it for the first time.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. But
have you ever read the book before, or was this your first time, by the way?
This is my first time actually reading it. But yeah, they have 4 arms because there's the one that loses a lot of their hearing, I think it is, from the pressure bomb.
Yeah, her aide, Leia's aide on the planet.
Yeah, and they're like floating around their arms while they're sleeping, so it's 4 arms there, and the werewolves have 6 legs.
And they sleep standing up when they're adults.
Yeah.
Because of course.
And Leia's like, oh, well, they have damaged hearing, but at least they're alive. And the guy's like, actually, we should kill them to be more merciful.
Leia's like, I still don't care.
Well, Leia gets pissed off at them they refer to her as Princess Leia, and this is like a huge affront to her. But she's never cared about that
everybody
before
does that
since.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Han's favorite title for her.
Yeah. A little weird. Just so yeah, the werewolves are fun. They don't really do much. I would have preferred, like, I liked that they were there because they were with the kids and stuff on the what are they called again? The planet, because
Worldcraft.
Hethrir is a he was the, I can't remember his title. Procurator
of Justice.
Yeah.
Handpicked by Darth Vader along with Lau to become a Dark Jedi, and then got a nice admin position within the Empire, which came with a nice free planet from Palpatine.
Which Palpatine does sometimes. Because I remember, and we're about to read the Revenge of the Sith novelization. I'm pretty sure he offers Anakin the Corellian system. All 5 planets.
Well, what does he need with it? He's got technically the entire galaxy. He's just giving, like, he's delegating. Every good leader delegates.
Not even like delegates. He's just offering Anakin to have it.
Well, what you don't see is that, like, part of that scene that was kind of cut from the book and then from the movie was that he was on a video call with Garm Bel Iblis at the time and was just trying to piss him off.
Gotcha. He's like, what do you think of that, dickhead? But yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the least believable parts of the book for me is how the werewolf makes it through so many scenes without one of the Empire Reborn just literally killing it right away. There's no reason to keep it alive. They're all clearly annoyed by the fact that it's around. They have to take care of it. They're separate. They want to keep it separated from Anakin and the kids. Like, just kill it. Yeah. Like, there's no reason for them to not kill it.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say that doesn't piss on the floor at any point.
Well, we don't know that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
We have to assume it was pissing on the floor.
Frequently and vigorously.
Yeah, like Leia mentions the fact that Chewie's leg is all fucked up with like blood and the cut. She doesn't mention that he's also coated in feces because he's been stuck in a bed, and she has no interest in taking care of him.
Plus, he's got no visible butthole. Of course, he's covered in feces.
Well, that's part of Wookiee physiology that we never really get into in the books, but I'm sure we'll need to do an episode on that.
Maybe it's like their nails, like they've got an anus that extends at will.
All right, we don't need to talk about this.
Just a thought.
Don't need to talk about this. Don't need to talk about that.
What do you want to talk about then?
I'm looking at. Well, you said you have a bunch of notes, and I have a bunch of notes. Oh, so
C-3PO is a Chad. Nope, I got mine in first.
Okay, C-3PO does get attacked by a lightsaber, and he's fine.
There's that, but also the fact that at the beginning of the book, he's got like a full repository of human love notes and like poetry.
Well, we know that already. Like he's doing that for Han and courtship, right?
That's true. That's a good callback.
This is something that is well established within the lore.
Everyone was pretty nice to 3PO in this book. Did you notice that?
Well, except for Hethrier.
Well, yeah. But I mean...
Han did keep a lot of his, like, petty jabs inside, but he's Vacation Han. So he's being nicer.
We've seen Vacation Han before, though. Like, when he was skiing, he wasn't that nice to 3PO.
Yeah. That's true. Mm-hmm. But that's later on. He's mellowed out a little bit by then, right?
Well... Yeah. No, but he's
actually,
nicer.
It's not that later. It's not that much later. It's Dark Jedi or Jedi Academy's very soon.
Yeah. What? This is what, 12? And
this is
Jedi
12.
Academy 12 as well?
Yeah, because like Jaina and Jason, it might even be before. Because Jaina and Jason are super tiny in that.
Yeah, that's 11.
When Jason fights the
Exarchate?
bird.
The birds, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 11, so...
Yeah. But the other thing with Han and his weird relationship stuff is the ghostling that comes up to them when they're walking around, which is like this described as I guess kind of like sirens in a way. Mm-hmm. Like that seems to be the
you have sex with them and they die.
Yeah, they want to have sex with humans, but humans just crush them apparently. But one walks up to Han and says, I want to give you something, the route to happiness. And Han's like, to your death. And he's just he just jumps to the conclusion that the only reason this person could be approaching me on the street is because they want to fuck me. Mm-hmm. That's the only possible conclusion.
Mm-hmm. And no, she's like, I want to show you this giant gelatinous blob covered in plates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what Waru looks like. He's like a giant, like semi-viscous fluid, like cube covered in
which
shields.
You can breathe.
Yes. And the one thing that I thought really funny is at one point Han's like, this was the best example, or this is the only time I could truly say that it was made of ichor. I was like, how often is Han thinking of the word ichor? Like, I wouldn't consider that to be in Harrison Ford Han Solo's vocabulary.
Not only must he be thinking of it, he's gonna be like dying to say it for the last 14 years.
Yeah, it's like a Quarren dies. And he's like, ichor, and like, no, that's just blood.
When they're in the garbage.
I'm in the Death Star's ichor, and Leia's like, doesn't count.
No,
too watery.
If only it were more sentient.
Yeah. But yeah, and then like. Have you ever seen Moses in South Park? So it's just like this giant, like, what's he look like? He's like a giant cube or a giant. Let's see. I think it's Moses. Yeah, he's like a giant shield, and he's got like a really kind of deep, like. That's exactly how I imagined Waru's voice.
Okay.
Just like very godly and just like, and just like vibrating through like. I don't know. It's a voice a human can't make.
I kind of pictured Eeyore.
Well,
Winnie the
gone.
Pooh.
Yeah, no, I know who Eeyore is.
We've gotta get more energy. Because he's just tired the whole time. And he's got Luke bothering him. He just always seems like he wants to take a nap.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe with like a megaphone.
Maybe he's more relatable than I thought.
Yeah. Do you think we can get a Waru on Burial Cart?
No, he went back to his pocket dimension.
Yeah.
He'd need to come back.
That would be a good
I
post-sequel trilogy villain.
Waru coming back from other space, from Legends Other Space.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it.
I mean, maybe that's the connective tissue between the two universes.
Yeah.
How long do you think Waru was around for? Do we know?
I don't think it was super long. Shit. I was just reading up. Yeah, I don't think it was super long. I think it's like within the space of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's the book's in 14 ABY, so it's even later than
is it in 14? Okay.
Which makes sense because it's like 23 for Young Jedi Knights.
Yeah.
So.
But one of the things that's weird is like Leia and Han seem convinced that all of the Imperials are just fully gone. Yeah. Which is something that kind of shows up a lot in some of these books where it's like, oh, we've beaten them back entirely, but as it later gets established, like Pellion's empire is still there, reasonably powerful. Everyone knows they're there. Because Han asks his ex, like, oh, what are you doing now that there's no Imperials anywhere in the galaxy?
Are you stupid?
Because Leia thinks that no one's doing any kind of slaving, no one's Imperial at all. They've done it. They've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I gotta say, speaking of slaves, I pretty much hated every Ferrero. Like Hethrir, the unnamed one, the one who works with Leia. They're all just like really kind of miserable.
Yeah. And
naked
Tigris.
For a long time.
Yeah. So she's naked in the suspended animation thing. She comes out and Leia's just talking to her for half an hour, like.
And she's humanoid. Like she's a human basically, like a human that can, like a near human probably. Because I looked it up and she looked like a human, and it describes her as looking like a human. So
they basically just look human, and then their skin and hair changes color sometimes.
Like if I see a guy with his dong out, like I'm gonna offer him pants, even if he's like slightly different.
Yeah, like they were clearly really uncomfortable talking to Leia, and she just keeps going.
Yeah, so that might mean that there's like a subspecies of humans in Star Wars that just does go dong out all the time.
Yeah. So did the unnamed Ferrero Rocher know Rilawi was Hethrir's girlfriend?
I don't think so, because when she asks, why are you so angry at her? He says, because they're torturing her, so they must not like her. He doesn't seem to have any idea beyond that. Yeah.
Okay, so... Well, she also says, because she's not part of my clan, but like, come on. Let's get some amount of solidarity here, people.
Yeah, they're kind of weird with their names, too. It's like, you say someone's name, you gain power over them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a pretty common trope. So,
reminded me of what's his name from X-Wing, Oral.
Yeah,
although it's kind of the opposite, but
the weird thing there, or there were a few weird things there, but like
the thing there was probably the interdimensional space jelly, but
well, yeah, clearly, but. Hethrir just happy throwing out his name whenever, and she's like, when she's telling her story, he's like, and this man, and I will tell you his name like 30 times. Just fucking say a Hethrir. It's like, it's not like it's kept secret throughout the rest of the book for the audience. It's like, okay, you're talking about Hethrir clearly. I think by that point we even know that, and then it's just there are a few things that could have been maybe interesting things to keep. A mystery until later, and just doesn't bother trying.
Yeah, so I listened to the audiobook before I read it, and I was like kind of wondering whether that was like some weird abridgment where like they took out a
Nope.
bunch of information and then they've got to like fill it in. And then I read it and I was like, no, it's just it just do be like that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to point out someone in the I've seen this in the chat a few times. This book is bad, but it's still better than Children of the Jedi. I agree. Better than Children of the Jedi and Planet of Twilight, in my opinion.
Better than Children of Jedi, better than Planet of Twilight, probably better than Darksaber, and better than the Jedi Academy trilogy.
I don't agree with that last one. I agree, it's better than Champions of the Force, probably. But you think it's better than the entire Jedi Academy trilogy?
Maybe not better than Jedi Search, because I think that's the one I had highest ranked.
Mm-hmm. Probably better than Dark Empire 2 or 3, at least.
Like, as weird as this book can be, and as weird as some of the characterization in this book can be, there wasn't really a part of this book where I was thinking, why the hell am I reading this, or wanting it to be done faster? Yeah. Like, I still enjoyed the whole thing.
I like Waru. It's Star Wars. Like, you can throw weird shit in a pulpy Star Wars book, and I don't mind. Like,
yeah, like, I don't know. I it's not going to be like in the pantheon of S tier Star Wars for me, and like as a Star Wars book, there's a lot of weird elements there. So I definitely consider it, like, as far as the lore goes, just a weird side thing. But I didn't dislike any of the book per se.
I legitimately enjoyed reading it more than I enjoyed reading Greater Good. Thrawn Greater Good.
I didn't.
Fair enough.
But that's why we need our spreadsheet put together.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so the Leia leaves the planet, leaves Montekodru, because she's thinking the kids, they were kidnapped by a dark side practitioner, not as part of these stupid coup kidnappings that they do for fun on Montekodru. Finds Aurelio. I want to. There's a character in League called Alawi, so it's kind of similarly spelled, so I keep wanting to call her that. But yeah, so she finds out they're looking for Hathrir. It all comes together at the end. They all end up in the same place. They find Jaina and Jason on the world craft thingy,
which is kind of random because there's actually no connection besides Waru between Han ending up there and Leia ending up there. It's one of those cases that you see all the time where, like,
very contrived.
Yeah, where it's like Han and Luke are there for a completely different reason. Like, they're
I
there
completely
because
forgot when they learned that the kids were kidnapped, other than the fact that they saw Anakin.
Yeah, they
like
don't
Han
learn.
And Luke.
Like, the way they learn is Leia goes, "Jason and Jane are okay," and I imagine Han's like, "Why the fuck would they not be?" Like,
yeah, most of what Han and Luke are doing is kind of irrelevant, but I thought Moody Luke was still kind of fun.
I would have liked Lando to be there.
Yeah, Lando would have been nice.
Yeah, like Han is out drinking every night, gambling. Like, would have been fun.
Yeah, they could just. It would have been really. The best would have been if Lando showed up at Kesha Station, just at the end of the book, having none of his own. Yeah, like there, nothing else connecting him to anything. He just shows up with everyone else. But there is one thing that is unforgivable in this book that Leia does, and she says R2 has a lot of good qualities, but he doesn't have much in the way of a sense of humor. And no, just R2
objectively false.
Yeah, like, come on. Which is why I'm giving this book an F.
I was thinking it's funny too. At the end, they're just ready to leave. So, surprise, surprise, Waru sends himself back to his pocket dimension, not after consuming one of the Jedi children, because Anakin's we get in this book, Anakin is like the chosen one. Well, not the chosen one, but he's the most powerful of the three, it seems, which is something we kind of get alluded to later. But yeah, they're about to feed Anakin to Waru. Anakin has this little kid with him the whole time. It's Hathrir's son, and he's got no force powers. He's always trying to impress his dad. It's kind of sad. But he saves Anakin at the last minute. And then for some reason, even though Anakin and the kids are free, Luke jumps in to Waru, and Han and Leia follow, and they go for like a trippy 70s style swim through Waru's internal ichor. And the children, the call of the children snaps Luke out of it, and yeah. I guess that's why he ends up having Ben later on.
Yeah. Once he's done screwing computers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I would have liked that though if it had actually played on Luke wanting to have kids, because we don't get anything from Luke's perspective really. Because he's just crazy the whole time.
Yeah. If he was just like, these little things sure are useful.
Yeah.
I think like Ben kind of just comes along because Luke and Mara are portrayed as like the horniest people in the world.
Luke's like, no Jedi will, no rubber can contain a Jedi Grandmaster.
Do you think Star Wars has like latex condoms, or do they just have better birth control pills?
No, they definitely have like, I don't know, something little particle fields that just you put around the tip of your wiener. Probably. Be my guess.
What if it's something like the crawlers that just aborts any?
That's dark.
Like the way Leia and Chewie disguise themselves, they dye their hair, which involves letting these little worms crawl through them and crawl through their hair and dye it. Not like biological worms, but that is the method of application that apparently exists for
what do you
Star
mean
Wars
not
hair
biological
dye.
worms?
Were they alive?
I thought so.
I thought they were just like mechanical.
I thought they were alive.
Agents.
I thought they were actual worms.
Oh, so it is like the Yuzon Vong / Flintstones living creature. Yeah, it's all living, kind of.
So that's what I figured, yeah. I could be wrong on that, but that's how I read it. And it's like...
I'd need to go check again. I won't because I don't care that much, but I need to go check.
Leia goes incognito a lot as well. Like, she's incognito for, like, Tatooine's son, and, like, not as, like, having her hair down, but, like, as... Well, I think she's a Twi'lek, maybe. So it's like, she should be used to it, but it's like, she's making a big deal of it. She's like, oh, I wish I had better hair dye here. I gave Chewbacca all the nice ones. She actually says that.
Yeah, and the one she's looking at are like brown. It's like, your hair's brown already. What are you talking about?
She's like, no one will notice me with my hair down. It's like, okay. Like, I think they might. Like, I think they probably will.
Hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like...
Which she's done better before, so...
Does she disguise herself in the Thrawn trilogy? I can't remember.
I don't remember now. I don't think the beard method of disguise is quite as effective as this book portrays it to be.
No, Han does that in Aftermath as well.
Yeah.
Also, I believe that this is not the only time that Luke does the mind trick disguise. I think he does that later on.
Does that happen in Black Fleet Crisis?
I think so, yeah.
There's a lot of mind projection in Black Fleet Crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he does that later on. I don't remember what context, but he's like, it even fool... because I remember there's like a conversation he has where he's like, it can even fool security cameras. But yeah,
that seems weird.
Han does the beard thing in Aftermath as well, the second one. And then in Battlefront 2, he's got it. It's like, he looks like Han Solo with a beard. So.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about with the book before we do our rankings and get to the questions?
No, pretty fun. Not that bad. It's readable. I think it's like one of those things where like people say it because...
It's kind of a meme at this point.
It's a meme at this point.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's very pulpy. It's not high literature or anything, but it's not awful.
Yeah, it's like the 90th of 90s Star Wars books.
Mm-hmm.
And it executes on that well within the context of that. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm going to give it a C.
All right. See, that's what I'm going to do as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for Crystal Star.
Crash for Kesha Station.
Yeah, so I Crystal starred a bunch of emails for us for today's episode, if you want to pull up the email.
Yes, I do.
And I will read the first one here from, actually, did we answer this last time? I don't think we did. Yes.
I'll read it. Dear Justin and Corey, throughout the podcast, Justin, you have frequently shared stories of your kids. How do you plan on introducing your kids to Star Wars? What comes first? How do they show legend and canon? That's a good question. The way my kids were first introduced to Star Wars is I do a lot of listening in the car, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. But my son August is like he's fully into Star Wars now. Like he was wearing his stormtrooper pajamas today. Kind of dark if you think about it, but like he's carrying around R2D2
turned out your
now.
kid was a fascist.
Yeah, he's always asking me to watch Star Wars and stuff. Like I'll put on Star Wars, and like he just doesn't quite understand that like Darth Vader's not always going to be on the screen, because he'll be like, "Want to watch Darth Vader?" It'll be like Empire Strikes Back. Darth Vader's scene will play, and then like it'll be like a different scene. He'll be like, "Want to see Darth Vader? Want to see stormtroopers?" I'm like, well, hold on.
How does he feel about the prequels? Has he seen them yet?
No, he hasn't seen much of the prequels because he really likes the droids, and I feel like they're in the original trilogy more. Yeah. But no, we do have he knows most of the characters. Like I've got a book and I'm trying to think of like all the characters he knows. Like he knows like Boss Nass, Jar Jar, Boba Fett, Mandalorian, Baby Yoda. He knows like I don't know. It's crazy. They're sponges, so like they pick up so much. Yeah. But yeah, he's a big fan. He's really smart too. He's got his tablet, which we let him use sometimes. It's got Disney Plus on it. He'll turn Disney Plus on, leave the app, do picture in picture, and plays like Peppa Pig game. I'm like, I don't even know how to do picture in picture, and you're 2.5.
I mean, you're leaving out the part where he sneaks out from your supervision to do that.
No, he does this on his own. Like, yeah. Or like he's been Skyping my parent or FaceTiming my parents, and he'll put he'll put like Star Wars on picture in picture, and like he can't hear them, but he doesn't care.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, replacing me soon, hopefully, so I can retire. Yeah.
I don't know if Gus would have been ready for the Crystal Star review, so I'm glad we got this in first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I agree.
But our next question is from Tristan, who kind of asked a two-part question here. One, it's about Republic Commando and our opinions on them. Already asked about the Karen Travis stuff and your views on Mandalorians, and I'm well aware of your opinions on the Republic Commando game. If you guys have to read the Republic Commando novels, I'm wondering what your opinion on them was. And I mostly read the first one and personally enjoyed the more military-oriented aspect of it. I was wondering if you guys thought it was a good thing for Star Wars, or if the franchise would take a more fantastical route or something in between. So we'll probably talk about the books when we like do the actual reading of those books. Mm-hmm. But I thought the last part there on the whole fantasy versus like military or sci-fi, harder sci-fi element, we could talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for both. I mean, not having read that much military sci-fi in Star Wars recently, I tend to prefer more fantastic stuff. Like I think Halo I prefer. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's military sci-fi. I like it in that universe, but I find military sci-fi is not as good if you're not super consistent about it.
Yeah.
And
that's not something Star Wars does. Be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, we'll be talking about Republic Commando at some point. Probably not too long. I can't promise that.
So next question is from Keenan, who says, would you do a podcast on the Mass Effect trilogy? And you're playing that now, right?
Yeah, so I've played Mass Effect 1 for a couple hours. Mm-hmm. Whenever, like, I think after Mass Effect 3 came out, so uh, I don't really know too much about the trilogy. I've managed to avoid a lot of spoilers.
That's good.
Which is kind of impressive for how long it's been.
It's also hard to spoil Mass Effect because it's like...
Well, there's all this stuff with like the choices at the end of 3 where I'm vaguely aware that stuff happens in the games that you make a choice on. But like since the original ones came out, I've basically looked, if I was listening to a podcast that was going to talk about it, I've turned it off. If I've started reading anything that talks about it, I've turned it off. Like I've managed to avoid it, so I'm looking forward to a mostly blind playthrough.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if we'd ever do a podcast for it, but it might be something we could talk about as Corey's playing. That's a Bad Batch question. The next one is from Chris, who says, just a quick question for both of you. Do you think in any way that Legends went in the later stages such as introduction... Oh, okay. I get what he's saying. He's saying if we think Waru would have been more accepted had it come after stuff like Celestials and Abeloth. Personally, I don't think so. Waru's just really weird.
Either.
Yeah,
Waru's really weird, and it's not like Abeloth and the Celestials.
We're well
like the Celestials as a whole, I don't think people have too many problems with, other than like general gripes with all sci-fi fantasy ending up with some sort of precursor race being kind of annoying. But like people aren't fans of Abeloth and the Mortis trio very much, I don't think. So I don't think Waru coming after that would have been taken as a good thing.
I agree. I did also mention, I did mean to bring up continuity as well. We get a few characters from this book in later books. I know that Jaina's little centaur friend appears later on. I think she becomes a Jedi.
Does she?
Yeah, I believe so.
I was kind of wondering if she did, but like Zavari is in the Han Solo books that we haven't read yet,
which came out after this.
Yeah,
the Crispin ones, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. I mean, that's kind of weird because it's nice. She's an interesting character, but I mean, we don't really get much of her personality other than like the fact that she lost her family. Most of like her personality is like Han knew this from the time he'd spent with her. Like, why? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did think it was funny too, how the scene where Han has a nightmare and she's like, yeah, but imagine if that nightmare was real. And he's like, it wasn't real though. And it's like, she lost her whole family, dude. You had a bad dream. Like, chill out.
Yeah. And he's telling Luke that's why Luke could never understand and she could. It's like, I mean, no, your dream doesn't count.
Yeah. Sorry, I just hit the mic there. Javier says, greetings, Corey and Justin. Just want to know your guys' opinion on the Hapes Consortium, and if they were returned to canon, would you guys want them to return? I'm actually really surprised they haven't. I don't even think they've been mentioned. I think the Hapes cluster maybe has been mentioned. Oh, really?
Like, the planet's definitely been mentioned. I think the consortium has been as well. Because the Zan Consortium has been mentioned as well.
So it says the Hapes Consortium was an organization that, so there's like, they were included in one map, basically.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised because that's something that can be pretty easily brought into, you know.
Well, there's not a huge amount of books that they could have been brought into yet.
But like, I expect them to be in like a smuggler's guide or something.
Yeah. The more factions for me, like the more factions, the better. I always find that stuff to be interesting. So I'd be happy to see them come back.
Yep. Me too. Henry says, hey guys, just catching up on some old eps and recently read Alphabet Squadron. The biggest, most glaring issue with the book is that it's the lamest name for a squad in the EU. I do think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, the name was given to them by other people on Lodestar that were trying to make fun of them. So it wasn't supposed to be a cool name. They reclaimed it for themselves. Yeah. Then our last email for the night comes from Joel, who says, 2 questions. If you were told that Star Wars Legends was ending, you could essentially write the last EU book, what book would you write? And do you consider James Luceno Plagueis to be at least the spiritual ending to the expanded universe?
I don't know. Um, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
no, not really. I don't think there is really a spiritual ending, which I think is why a lot of people are kind of were annoyed because there was like a lot to be told. Um, if I were to do one more trilogy, it would be or one more book, it would be something trying to tie up as much of the Jaina and Luke stuff as I could.
Yeah. Some sort of series about how Corellia and the Confederacy actually get back into the Galactic Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, the last book we have still leaves off with the galaxy split into those two factions. And we know by the comics that they're back together, by, like, the Legacy comics, which I don't love that those exist how they
No,
do.
me neither.
But,
I would rather they didn't exist at all, personally.
yeah.
Or just to be declared non-canon. Like I think the Legacy comics would have worked really well as like a longer Infinities series where it's like this is because it's so far off in the future. Well, like 100 years, like you could just call it, you know, Visions or like
Yeah.
Futures or something.
Like, I feel like had Legends continued, that would have been a really weird sticking point where like there's 100 years of stuff to fill between then, and yeah, that's kind of an issue that New Canon has with the time between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, where we know what the end point is. So it is a bit harder to tell some of those stories unless you're going to the lesser character, or not lesser characters, but introducing new characters like the Mandalorian, where their stories aren't necessarily kind of super tied up in what's going to come of them. Like there are still a lot of good stories in those periods, and there could have been good stories in like Sword of the Jedi or something coming after that. But that's like 100 years of history where we know where it's going.
Yeah,
And it would have been tough.
another problem too is at least Legacy didn't have this problem, but in canon, we know it was a relatively peaceful period as well. So like that naturally limits the scale of like events. Yeah. Like I don't know if you can fit another Thrawn campaign, maybe another Thrawn campaign, but not much more than that.
Yeah, like we definitely know that in those 100 years there was going to be some sort of war or some sort of political event to get the Confederation back into the Galactic Alliance. But we also know the Galactic Alliance is still there. The Fel Empire is still there, and no one really seems
more
to
prominent
care about that. Yeah, like just kind of grows a bit. But and it's not even that I necessarily dislike the Legacy comics per se. It's just that having that all solidified, it's kind of rough.
I agree. I think it would have been cool to see more of the Darth Krayt stuff because like Fate of the Jedi was kind of, and even Legacy of the Force was kind of leading into that. But like with the Dark Man and stuff, but
yeah. If it had even been set like 20 years after Fate of the Jedi instead of another like 80, then that could have been fine, especially because there are so many characters tied in from pre-Empire. Like the entire Jedi Council at that point, everyone Luke trained, even some of the ones that should have reasonably still been alive, are just gone. And you got Trissa, you got Kakruk, and who's the other one? But I think it's 3 people that are from the original Jedi Order, right? I can't remember. Or the third one might not be. Because Cole's stepped down. No, Cole's dead. He stepped down and then died. Something. I forget. But
yeah. I mean, we could have. I personally not a huge fan of like a comic setting the state of the universe like as well. I'm biased towards books. I prefer books. Yeah. And I think they do a better job of storytelling generally. Yeah. Like universe building anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've got. Anything you want to end off with or?
Nope. That's it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks everyone for watching. We will be and listening. We will also be doing another podcast episode in half an hour over on the X2 podcast, X2 channel. It'll be the first ever X2 podcast. For some reason, Charlie called it number 0.
Counting is not a strong suit.
Yeah. Charlie sends me one title or so like a week that just like offends me to my core.
Well, on the Tapcaf side, we've got another episode coming tomorrow talking about Bad Batch episode 3 and 4. And then only next week, next Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's some interesting stuff that happened there, and we didn't really
It was
talk
a great
about
episode
it here. Yeah. So we'll see how good 4. If something like crazy happens in 4, maybe we'll just talk about that. But yeah, so that'll be tomorrow. The next Thursday, episode 3 for episode 66 of the podcast. We're going to be reading the novelization by Matthew Stover. And yeah.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Where's the end button? Corey, help me.
At the top.
I closed the tab. Corey, you gotta keep people entertained.